Hello everyone, this is the Sankofa series for the African American Cultural Garden. I'm Obie Shelton, the Executive Director of the Cultural Gardens. And if you have tuned in, you know that we highlight people in our community who are making the community what it is. And it gives you a chance to kind of know a little bit more about them. And hopefully you're inspired by their stories and their what they do. And it inspires you to do what you are called to do. I have two people with me. It's a mother-daughter. Spoiler alert. But you have maybe you've seen either of them in different situations, but they have their own spaces that they operate in. First, we have Dr. Donna M. Whyte and her daughter Mariama Whyte. Doctor, I'll let you explain what you do.
Oh, okay. Well, currently, and for many years, I have been a part-time faculty member at Cleveland State University. I teach in a number of different departments: Africana Studies, Urban Studies, Religious Studies, and history. History actually is my academic home. So I have been at Cleveland State for a number of years and started teaching in 2009, teaching part-time.
So if people see you, in Cleveland, those who are in around Cleveland State, a lot of students know you, a lot of faculty know you, and people know you in that space. Now, your daughter Mariama, you're in a different line of work or endeavor. What do you do?
Well, I'm an artist. I am a singer, songwriter, actor, musician, an artist, a writer. And so I've been in Cleveland most of my life. I took a break and toured for a while with Broadway shows, and I've been back since 2008 to raise my son. And it's been really great to be able to be home and continue to do my art, to do what I really enjoy doing. So right now I'm actually in a play at the Cleveland Playhouse called Fat Ham. I'm working on new music. I have a single coming out pretty soon in March that I'm really excited about. And I have music out there. I've been recording for a long time. So it's really cool to not only have a nice following here in Cleveland, but also throughout the country and abroad as well.
I've seen you on a TED Talk.
Yes, I am a TEDx speaker too. Right.
Yes.
I do speak.
So, and again, these are people that, someone who's tuning in, maybe you went to school with them or they've interacted with you. I'm interested, Mom, as you're raising her, when did you realize she had an artistic direction?
Very early, very early. Well, art is in our family. Mm-hmm. So many people may know my sister Diane McIntyre. So, she's a Clevelander and a John Adams graduate and all, and, lived in New York for a number of years.
And she's a famous dancer. Right?
Yes, she's a choreographer. And so it's in the family, it's in the blood. And I felt it was very important just to raise my children, to know music, to have whatever art drew their attention. So they took piano lessons, both of my daughters. Miata Hunter is my daughter as well. And so it was just an assumption that they would be exposed to art, and then they could choose. They could choose whatever art form drew them. And so they don't necessarily have one. I did not anticipate necessarily, but when Mariama was young, she always performed in some way. And I would hear her sing. And Miata, for people who may know or may not know her, she sang. She told me when she was very young that she wanted to sing. And so I said, okay, fine, let's find a, voice teacher. But I'd hear this voice in the house, and I would think it was Miata because she was a soprano. And then I'd realize it was Mariama, and she could do, and she could kind of improvise. Let me put it that way. There was a talent that was really just a part of her nature. She was always her own person. And so in elementary school was perhaps the time that we came back to Cleveland. My thought, of course, was the place you go is Karamu House. And so, they took acting lessons, voice lessons, and from there, the Cleveland
Institute of Music.
Yeah, Institute of Music, the Music School Settlement. So it was required, as far as I was concerned as a parent.
So did your mom, you knew she was an educator. When did you know that you were an artist?
It was just always in me. It wasn't anything that I think I thought much about because it was so natural to me. I think, though, when I was in the fourth grade, I tell this story, which is part of my TEDx talk. What I realized when I would be anxious or nervous or feel a little bit out of sorts, I realized that performing was my way of being able to communicate and tell story, put on costume, become a new character. When I was younger, and still every now and then when I get very, very nervous, I may have a stutter. So when I was very young and I felt put on the spot, I would stutter or I would just get very, very nervous and not speak. And I had to do a talk. Well, I had to do a presentation when I was in the fourth grade about how to present, how to show something, whatever your skill was. Excuse me. And I was so nervous to be able to do it because I thought in my mind that I had to stand up there as Mariama and be, in the fourth grade, be this orator, right? And I was afraid of that. And I told my mother that I was really nervous, and she suggested that I put on a skit because I would probably put on a lot of skits at home.
Yeah.
When my aunt would come in from New York, my sister and I would always put on these dance shows for her in the living room and stuff. So that was always a part of me. So my mother said, just, be yourself, do what you really love. And I put on a skit, got my friends together, and that was the first time I was in front of my peers and at school being able to speak fluently in front of my class. And so I realized, I was like, oh, this is something that I really enjoy doing, and it's also my way to be able to stand in front of people and present myself and show up.
And I heard in your talk that the topic of your talk was
how to procrastinate. I was pretty good at it back then.
She was good at that.
Yeah, I was good at procrastinating, but it was my way of telling people not to procrastinate.
Exactly. And a lot of people really connect with that. Both being able to get up and speak in front of people, and then to be able to relate your experience, your issue with procrastination, and make that the topic.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was fun. It was funny. It was a hit. They enjoyed it.
So you all are growing up in Cleveland, and I didn't ask you how you found out that you were a teacher. I mean, how did that develop?
Oh, well, for those of us who grew up at the time that I did, we played school. I mean, it was just what you did. Our role models. My mother was a teacher. My mother's sister was a teacher. I grew up in a household where my mother said, we're a family of teachers. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, was a teacher. So I heard this from very young. And growing up in Cleveland Public Schools, I have to say I went to A.J. Rickoff Elementary School, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams High School. All right. So teachers were our role models outside of family and other people in the community. And so very early, they were the people I wanted to be. I remember one time I had a teacher who, I think perhaps fourth or fifth grade, I remember calling her Ma. I mean, this was the relationship I felt that I had with her. I was embarrassed because that's how close I felt to her. But these were women, who were the most significant outside of my family, because the role models that I would always think that I would identify would be my mother, my sister, my aunt, the people in my family. But outside, also, women were like the women in our family. And most of the time, they would be teachers or people who I was exposed to in church. So I intended to be an English teacher. So again, English was my favorite subject. I went to college. It didn't turn out to be that way. So I knew that my desire or my calling, or if I could figure out a way to do this, I wanted to be in the classroom. It didn't turn out to be secondary education, but I really wanted to be a place where I could help people move forward with their lives, particularly with information I think is really helpful for them to understand, our world. Most of the classes that I teach have, has to do with African Americans or, African history. And so I saw that as a very young person, and in so many ways, I feel that that we were teachers, even if we were not teachers on a formal level. But my mother didn't allow that to be something that I missed. She says, we're a family of teachers. And my mother was not a teacher from the day she was in college to her retirement. That was her last career. My mother had been an accountant. She had been a social worker, and she actually went to Kent State and, acquired her certification to teach. And, influenced very much because her sister had always been a teacher in Baltimore.
I always ask, everybody goes through struggles, challenges, and in whatever way you're comfortable, if you could tell me about how you got through that, or maybe when you watched the other one go through a struggle, what that was like. What comes to mind, either something that you had to overcome or something that you saw your mom overcome?
I'll say this. A pivotal moment in my life was when I became a mother. The most important role of all, regardless of what I do as an artist, as a woman in the world, my role as a mother is the most important. And I was on the road when I was doing The Lion King. I left the Lion King tour in 2005.
She was at the Lion King, y'all.
I left in 2005 when I left, and in between The Lion King and The Color Purple,
She was on The Color Purple, y'all.
In between that, I found out that I was having a baby, and so my son was born in 2006, and he was actually on the road with me when he was a baby. I brought him on the road, and he was for about a year and a half. I brought him home for about 6 months, to get a little rest, save a little extra money, and but then I decided to come home. My mother and I had a conversation around, how to have a career in the arts on Broadway touring and being a single mother was difficult. So I decided to come home, and we said, we'll figure it out. And it wasn't necessarily a hard decision to make, because I loved raising him. I love my job, but at the same time I was like, I can't wait home. I can't wait to get home and be home with my baby. But at the same time, the balance of building an artist career and being a mother can sometimes be a struggle. It's not a challenge. I'll say that it can be a challenge, because I want to be able to continue to do what I love to do, but also remain present for him, not just physically present, but emotionally present. But what I am really proud to say is that Cleveland has been coming back home, although in my mind before when I left, I never thought I would return home. Coming back home has been so rewarding to be able to come back with a different perspective, being able to work in Cleveland, being able to bring perspective from being on the road, being able to teach, coach people, young people, being able to have experience and expertise from my experience on the road, but also my experience being here, how to thrive as an artist here in Cleveland, But I will say that being able to look back, especially now that my son is 18, to be able to say that there are choices that I made, some choices I've had to say no to, simply because I need to be there for him, and that I may continue to say no to, and it's okay. One thing that I am excited about too, that I've always been excited about, is regardless of whether someone else is booking me, I'm always coming up with ideas to book myself, So that's what I feel like motherhood really has helped me to tap more into my entrepreneurship. Because as artists, a lot of times we're always auditioning to get the part. But you rarely find a lot of artists who are creating their own work to book themselves. So I really feel like it was motherhood has been such a gift to me, and my son has been a wonderful gift to me to help me learn just more about me, more about myself.
Well, let me thank you for prioritizing your son. Mom, what have you had to work through? Or what you've seen her work through?
Let me pick one. All right. I assumed, the way my life went, went to Ohio State, graduated from Ohio State, married a couple of years later, had my children. Actually, my oldest was born in Philadelphia. We lived in Philly at that time, and then we moved back to Columbus because we had been at Ohio State. And, I had Mariama, and then I'm not married. Okay, so that was not the plan. So, and then the decision to come to Cleveland, I never thought that I would be back home. Certainly there are things I think people don't necessarily think about it was not intentional. It was because I called my mother and I said, "Can I come home?" She was like, "Child, if you knew my mother, you can always come home." Mm-hmm. So for a year, we lived with my parents right in Mount Pleasant. And I never envisioned myself being a single mother. It never crossed my mind. Mm-hmm. I had my children. Life was moving forward. We were in Columbus most of those years. And I come to Cleveland, and I have to not only be the mother who I want to be, but I have to kind of reinvent myself. At that particular time, I had completed my master's degree, and I had worked at Ohio State, so my orientation had worked also in nonprofit. So my orientation was really in higher ed. And so I had to think about, well, here I am. I don't have certain supports that I had before. And what am I going to do? But one of the things that happened, which was the beauty of coming home, was that people knew me. Mm-hmm. I would just be out and about in Cleveland, and people would say, "Donna McIntyre." I was like, oh my goodness, this can only happen at home. And so much of my life has been shaped in Cleveland, in Shaker Heights. People who know me in Shaker Heights. I'm very, very involved in Shaker. I ran into a friend of mine from elementary, junior, senior high school, Iris Clark Anderson. And one day she tells me she lives in Shaker. I moved there. And then one day she calls me and says, "The house next door to me is for sale." We live next door. We've been next door to each other for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. These things only could happen at home. And I didn't have this vision. But when I think back on it, and I had to be deliberate about, inventing, but most of it happened day by day. It was not a long, okay, I have this vision for the rest of my life. It was more about appreciating the support that I had, because when I came here, my parents were here. I did not raise my children by myself. Mm-hmm. I never had to have someone outside of family be at our house in the morning when I had to go to work, or be at home when they came home from school. We lived in Shaker. We moved into Shaker. My children were able to walk to school, elementary school. My mother and father were there. Mm-hmm. My father took Mariama to her violin lessons at the Cleveland Institute of Music. They had their own relationship with each other. And so these were things that I had not considered when I didn't live here. But my foundation in Cleveland has to do so much with the people who surrounded me. And I was not clear that I wanted to stay, because I wanted to live in the Baltimore, D.C., Virginia area. That was my goal. And I would even tell people, in 1993, I'm leaving, because that was when Mariama graduated from high school. And I remember someone saying, "Well, here it's 94. You said you were going to leave." I was like, well, things happened. And even in terms of my work life, I did know that I liked working in higher education. So I worked at Dyke College, actually, from 82 to 85. And I made a deliberate decision to never attempt to seek a career outside of higher education. But so I committed my life, and my purpose was to work in capacities where I could support students in ways that I didn't feel like I had support at a university like Ohio State, at least not from professional people. Support I had at Ohio State was really from friends, and not necessarily from the professional folks at the university.
So I'm hearing a lot of parallels, here that because of what you went through, you were able to, because of the support that you got, you're able to support her. And it sounds almost like there was some other support going from her to you.
Oh goodness. Goodness.
Yeah,
we
all support each other.
Oh my goodness. My children are my role models. I mean, and I'm not being facetious about that. We have characteristics that are just our own. And I mean, Mariam is an artist. She has determined that this is it. I don't know how. I'm like, okay, well, I am one of those individuals who, I need a job, I need benefits, I need, I have to do that. So, I could have been self-employed somewhere along the line. And my sister has been self-employed all her life. Mm-hmm. She's a choreographer who has made a life, and she's been independent, self-employed all her life. Mm-hmm. I was more like my family. I needed a job, benefits. I needed, I needed that security. And was glad. And my oldest daughter works full time, has benefits, and so it all worked out. And I wanted to make sure that that my children found, whatever their path was. My parents certainly. Just my sister and I, just the two of us in the family, they never made us feel like we had to be like each other. Mm. They never, and I mean, and for anybody who knows Diane, she's an overachiever. She's everything. And growing up with her was uniquely my opportunity. And she has been such a powerful, powerful role model and mentor for me, way beyond being a sister. Wow. So we have been blessed to be, in this family
together.
Yes, and I can't even. I'm not even going to start with my grandchildren. I mean, what I learned, being a grandmother, and what you learn from your grandchildren is just, and to see them as, this individual who has their own life and they're coming into their own, is just a joy. It's a joy. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is, of course, Black History Month. We're recording this during Black History Month, and that's why I'm, I got the garb on here and everything. And, of course, this is the African American Cultural Garden that we're working on. And you know that, I'm really working hard to try to make sure that we as a community come together and get this complete. Your thoughts about, the garden. How did you hear about it? What do you know about it? Mm-hmm. Do you think it's important that we pull together? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll say this. I've always known it's there, but the first time I was in the area to actually do a project, I did a video years ago in 2013 called We Be One for one of my songs. And the director, we were trying to figure out like where in Cleveland we could be. We did some stuff at the Rock Hall of Fame. We did some things at the Cultural Gardens. We weren't at the African American Cultural Garden, but we were in the area. But that was like my first time really being able to like see it in comparison to the other gardens as well. And all I can say is I'm very, very happy to know that there is more effort and push to really be able to build it up to what it should be. And to have more exposure for what you're doing, because if you pass by there, you can pass by there and totally just not see anything because you're going from one place to the next. But it was really cool for me to, at that time, to really like investigate, like, oh, wow. Because we passed by there, plenty of times. But to be able to actually look at each garden and to see African American Cultural Garden and go, okay, whoa, how much more we can really build this up, So it's very, very, very important for everyone to know that it's there and that there is that there is a lot of effort being put into. I mean, all the things you're doing to, to raise the money. It's important for us to have visuals. It's important for us to be able to go to a place that says this is ours. So I'm excited to be able to talk about it, and also excited to be able to help along, with getting the word out, because it's very, very important. Representation, we all know, is extremely important.
With your skills, we might put you to work there.
Okay.
Your thoughts, Dan? I don't know how familiar you are. The garden effort's been going on as long as we've been around.
Yes, it has. And I think that I can't even remember when I first heard about it. I mean, it's a jewel. The cultural gardens, it's just a jewel in Cleveland. Who else has cultural gardens, in this nation? And so, I guess I've heard of it as long as I've been here. I was like, okay, where is it? Martin Luther King Drive. And it's like, okay, I know that. Just recently, just a couple of years ago, I think it was, the historical marker is there. And so I was a part of the Cleveland Restoration Society and the whole, historical markers, the Cleveland Civil Rights Trail. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important that people understand the significance of all that is going to be represented there, all that's represented already, and then, the plan, to complete that, because there are so many ways that people may not know what they might learn. Mm. And beyond just the physical structure, people should understand the meaning behind everything that's represented there. So sometimes people learn things through media, but what's better than to go and touch and feel and understand more about our history, mm-hmm. particularly because we tie in Africa, and we generally don't know much. And so I teach classes on African history, which I came to later in my teaching career. It's not something that I had, many years ago, but I do perhaps know more than kind of the everyday person, and just tapping a person's curiosity perhaps takes them into a place where they'll say, oh, I didn't know this. Mm. Let me learn more. Let me see why it is that the cultural gardens feel that representing who we are in this way is important. And then to say how in Cleveland, just the African American community and the rich history and where we are currently is a message that the world should know. The garden is just a meaningful part of that message and that story.
I tell people out in the community that it's not just going to be a beautiful structure to look at, although it is, but it's going to be a meeting place. Yes. We'll be able to have weddings on the garden. Yes. You'll be able to jump the broom on the North Star. Oh my goodness! All the symbolism and explain. Mm-hmm. It'll be leverage for people to be able to explain what that means. Yes. This door of no return that you get to walk through, and you explain what that means in terms of the big swoop of history.
The location of it is phenomenal.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. To come down the hill. And it's going to be spectacular. Well, thank you, Dr. Donna McIntyre Whyte and Mariama Whyte, for letting us into your lives and
sure,
giving us a glimpse of people who live everyday lives but then do extraordinary things. That's kind of our history. And so that's what Sankofa is all about. So thank you for joining us. And remember, we gotta finish that garden.
Yes.
So these stories can be told, and you can take your kids, you can take your family on that garden. You could have a reunion on the garden and tell the story of how your grandfather, your grandmother, how they took care of your parents and how you're taking care of your kids. It's all important. That's why we gotta finish this thing. Thank you for watching.